Yeah, I mean, this is a classic yellow Parenti on the
existing
Cuban
socialist
Revolution
country,
here.
If you don't want to call them socialists, call them whatever you want. Post-capitalist, whatever. I don't care. Call them camels, window shades. Doesn't matter. As long as we know the countries we're talking about. You can look at any one of those countries, and you can evaluate them in several ways. One, comparing them to what they had before. And that, to me, is what's very compelling. That's what's so compelling about Cuba, for instance. When I was in Cuba, I was up in the Escambray, which is like the Appalachia of Cuba, very rugged mountains. The people, very poor, they were. And I said to this campesino, I said, do you like Fidel? And he said, sí, with all our souls. I remember his gesture, with all our souls. I said, why? And he pointed to this clinic right up there on the hill, which we had visited. He said, look at that. He said, before the revolution, we never saw a doctor. If someone was seriously ill, it would take 20 people to carry that person, because you'd go day and night. It would take 2 days to get to the hospital. First, because it was far away, and second, because you couldn't go straight. You couldn't cross the latifundio lands. The boss would kill you. So you had to go like this. And often when we got to the hospital, the person might be dead by the time we got there. Now we have this clinic up here with a full-time doctor. And today, a doctor in Cuba, when you become a doctor, you've got to spend 2 years out in the country. That's your dedication to the people. And a dentist who comes 1 day a week.
Slavery!
And for more serious things, we're not more than 20 minutes away from the larger hospital.
Slavery! What the hell? They're enslaving the doctors. Which, by the way, is a normal process that exists in countries like Turkey as well. I know to the average American, this is unfathomable. But when you get a fucking free education to become a goddamn doctor, okay, you get to work in areas of need. This is also the same in Turkey as well, which also has a nationalized healthcare system. Just so you understand, every competent fucking country on the planet that has a fraction of the interest of taking care of its fucking citizens understands this basic necessity. Americans, on the other hand, treat this like it's fucking slavery. They literally think it's slavery because they're fucking stupid. This is one of the biggest problems with Americans, is that they lack the imagination. They've never traveled outside of the United States of America. It's such a massive fucking country. So they just literally cannot comprehend a world that exists outside of the United States of America. So it doesn't exist because the average American lacks object fucking permanence. This system that exists in Cuba exists in virtually every fucking country that has a socialized system of healthcare.
That's in the Escambray. He said, that's freedom. We're freer today. We have more life. And I talked to a guy in Havana who says to me, before, all I used to see here in Havana, you call this drab and dull. We see it as a cleaner city. It's true, you got the paint is peeling off the walls, but you don't see kids begging in the streets anymore, and you don't see prostitutes. All we used to have was prostitutes. Prostitution used to be one of the biggest industries. And today, this man is going to night school. He said, I can read. I can read. Do you know what it means to be able to read? Do you know what it means to be able not to read? I remember when I gave my book to my father, I dedicated a book of mine, Power and the Powerless, to my father. I said, to my father with my love. Gave him a copy of the book. He opened it up, looked at that. He'd only gone to the 7th grade. He was a son of an immigrant, a working class Italian. And he opens the book and he starts looking through it.
We do this to get doctors for the Army, Navy, and other armed forces, free medical school for 5 years of service after you get your MD. Yeah, but that's not slavery.
And he gets misty-eyed, very misty-eyed. And I thought it's because he was so touched that his son had dedicated a book to him. That wasn't the reason. He looks up to me and says, I can't read this, kid. I said, that's okay, Dad, neither can the students. I mean, that's not something, I mean, don't worry about that. I wrote it for you. I mean, it's your book, and you don't have to read it. You know, it's a very complicated book, an academic book. He says, yeah, I can't read this book. And the defeat that man felt. That's what illiteracy is about. That's what the joy of literacy programs is. That's why in Nicaragua you got people walking proud now for the first time. They were animals before. They weren't allowed to read. They weren't taught to read. So you compare a country to what it came.
My lab mate from Cuba referred to it as slavery when talking to liberals. It's just so crazy. that the reactionary Cubans unironically have some of the most like right-wing attitudes I've ever encountered in my fucking life. It is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling, dude. Like they cannot imagine a world outside of like the like 17th century capitalism. Like 18th century capitalism. It's crazy.
Came from, with all its imperfections, and those who demand instant perfection. The day after the revolution, they get up and say, are there civil liberties for the fascists? Are they going to be allowed to have their newspapers and their radio program? Are they going to be able to keep all their farms? The passion that some of our liberals feel, the day after the revolution, the passion and concern they feel for the fascists, the civil rights and civil liberties of those fascists who were dumping and destroying and murdering people before. Now the revolution has got to be perfect. It's got to be flawless. Well, that isn't my criteria.
The Cuban Revolution literally was functionally bloodless in comparison to the previous formation that existed, by the way. Like, in comparison to Batista, the Cuban Revolution had some field justice that took place. This is true. A lot of people criticize this quite a bit, okay? Except the people that were executed for being the executioners and the torturers under the Batista regime. And according to the American government's own internal assessment, the number of deaths in the Cuban Revolution was marginal in comparison to the Batista regime. Marginal.
My criteria is what happens to those people who couldn't read. What happens to those babies that couldn't eat, that died of hunger?
Yeah, the Cuban Revolution was the most people's revolution that has ever happened in human history. Fidel only landed with 82 men with big beards and got through the swamps with 13 and fewer weapons. How do you think they won that? Yeah, because the people were agitated. They were ready to go.
And that's why I support revolution. The revolution that feeds the children gets my support. Not blindly, not unqualifiedly. And the Reaganite government that tries to stop that kind of process, that tries to keep those people in poverty and illiteracy and hunger, that gets my undiluted animosity and opposition.
This is your Ristorante Castel Nuovo. This is the Chatter's uncle's market that turned into a pizza restaurant. Maybe I'll go check it out when I'm there, Chatter. After the revolution, literally, there was a counter-revolution almost immediately. The same thing happened with Chile, and Allende was nice. And so if he put down the counter-revolution like Fidel told him, well, let's just say things might have been different. Yeah. There's also been entire books written about the role of women in the revolution. Yes, women played a massive role in the Cuban Revolution. Cuba is so fucking woke, dude. It's unbelievable. That's why you don't ever hear about the American propaganda that normally works with like Afghanistan or whatever. It doesn't work in Cuba at all. So you never hear about that. They'll just be like, I'll tell you what the lines are. The Cuban government is disgusting and corrupt. They refuse to give antibiotics to the Cuban people, which is such a funny thing to say. Like, tackling Cuban medicine is one of the worst angles to try to criticize the Cuban government because they have a higher life expectancy and they have a better medical system than we do, objectively. Like, this is the one area that they put a tremendous amount of effort into. Okay. They'll say the Cuban government withholds antibiotics from this population. They withhold, Castro refused to give milk to the children. You can't even hunt your own animals on the island. You'll get thrown in jail for it. They forced the doctors into slavery. That's another one. They forced their athletes into slavery as well. Athletes that fucking travel around the world when they go to competitions have to have a government handler with them at all times. And if they escape, their families will be put down. All this shit is lies, okay? Complete fucking lies. As far as Fidel and Che goes, Che is Argentinian. He's a lion. Okay, he is the GOAT. He was an incredible figure. But because he's Argentinian, you can't really hold it past him. When he was growing up, he wrote extensively, and he wrote some unfavorable things. Okay? He wrote some unfavorable things people always point to. They'll also say that they were homophobic, which is ironic because Fidel literally apologized. Fidel Castro apologized for his initial homophobia. Okay? I think it was like was it in the 80s when Fidel Castro had a perspective shift and openly released a statement apologizing. Don't put that. Wait, what do you mean? Don't put that he grew out of being Argentinian. Someone said don't put that on him being Argentinian. What do you mean? He was the greatest Argentinian of all time. The fuck are you talking about? Every Argentinian should be writing endlessly and reminding people all day, every day that Che Guevara was Argentinian. Yeah, Fidel Castro takes blame for persecution of Cuban gays. He cried. Fidel Castro said he is ultimately responsible for the persecution suffered by homosexuals in Cuba after the revolution in 1959. The former president told the Mexican newspaper La Jornada that there were moments of great injustice against the gay community. If someone is responsible, it's me. In the 60s and 70s, many homosexuals in Cuba were fired, imprisoned, or sent to re-education camps. Mr. Castro said homosexuals had traditionally been discriminated in Cuba just as black people and women. But nevertheless, he admits he didn't pay enough attention to what was going on against the gay community. At the time, we were being sabotaged systematically. There were armed attacks against us. We had too many problems, said the 84-year-old communist leader. Keeping one step ahead of the CIA, which was paying so many traitors, was not easy. He said, I'm sorry to the gay community. In 1979, homosexuality was decriminalized, and more recently, there have been efforts to legalize same-sex unions, which they did. Anyway, yeah, he went woke. Like, are you going to tell me he's bullshitting? That's obviously a very real thing he dealt with. Yes, Americans cannot comprehend. Americans cannot fucking comprehend what Cuba, revolutionary Cuba, looked like and what we tried to do. Okay? They tried to kill him 638 times. Yeah, they did. They tried to poison him. They tried to fucking use like comical means of trying to murder him. They tried to blow up his cigars, bro. The CIA was the most indecent, is still the most indecent institution on the planet, but like the shit that they were trying to do to this man is crazy. They tried to use one of his ex-girlfriends to assassinate him. She fell back in love with him. It failed. She turned. It's beast mode. He seduced her. It's kind of crazy. I think a lot of Zoomers don't know why, even in the United States of America, motherfuckers used to ride for Fidel Castro. Motherfuckers used to ride for Che Guevara. It was such a common revolutionary figure that there's still a holdover meme about like the Che Guevara t-shirts, right? There's a reason why people were wearing Che Guevara t-shirts, not because he's hot, even though he was, and so was Fidel, but it was because these dudes had maximum aura. Okay? They were mogging the entire state apparatus on a daily fucking basis. Che Guevara would literally, on his off day, go and work with the regular fucking workers. He'd be carrying bags of cement. He was like, I ride for this shit. I live for this shit. Che Guevara literally spent the last half of his life trying to liberate Africa. And motherfuckers still talk shit and say he was racist as an Argentinian teenager. The fuck do you mean? Going to Cuba will change your life, man. It's one of the reasons I'm here and got radicalized, because I went to Havana and never seen people with more solidarity in life. It will touch you. Yeah. They were pulling up his old tweets to be like, bro, oh, I can't believe what you said when you were in your 20s. Fucked up. It's not even a question, the shit that we try to do. The shit that we try to do to Cuba, there is no justice in this world, okay? There is no justice in this world. It blows my fucking mind. And I still hear from motherfuckers. Every damn day, people will be like, yo, it's the worst country. Oh, it's because of communism. Yeah, really? Twitter commies will come for you on God. Wait, what? For what? Operation Northwoods was the peak of our insanity. The false flag plan to frame Cuba. Yeah. I mean, JFK was an anti-communist. And even JFK was like, all right, guys, that's a bridge too far. We can't do a 9/11 on America, okay? But like, that's the OG. Well, the OG 9/11 is Chile. But this was like, you know, the 9/11 that I've said famously that America deserved. Okay, that 9/11, we were gonna do that to ourselves, blow up parts of fucking Florida, and then blame Cuba for it, so we could justify a war with Cuba. And JFK was like, "No, that's crazy. I'm an anti-communist, but that shit is that's a bit wild, don't you think? Maybe we shouldn't do that, actually." JFK did begin the Cuban Missile Crisis by being belligerent to the USSR for zero reason and putting nukes there. Calm down. He was crazy himself. Wait, what? I know. I'm saying even for that man, it was the CIA was a little bit too crazy. It was my whole family store. My abuela was the youngest of 24 kids. You can show chat the restaurant. It's in Varadero, where the wealthy Americans and mafia went on vacation. The DuPont mansion and the Hemingway's boat are still there. As the only grocer in the city, we were close to them and picked up their capitalist brain rot. Anyway. Yeah, this is the GOAT. Yes, of course I'm familiar with him. Are you kidding me? Cubalı güreşçi Mihail Lopez Nunez. Madalyaları ve Fidel Castro. I love that it's a Turkish socialist magazine that you linked this from. But yes, this is the greatest Olympic wrestler of all time, maybe the greatest Olympian ever. He's a heavyweight wrestler who won 5 straight Olympic gold medals, going all the way back to 2004. It is said that this will never be accomplished. Bro, Fidel gave the CIA spy a weapon in her hand and said, "Kill me if you dare, but I know you love me." They proceeded to make love. She even wrote a book about it. If young Fidel went to Miami nowadays, Clavicular, ASU frat leader Duke Dennis, and Marlon would sit down and take notes. He's got the most aura and riz of all time. Yes. Yes. For Americans, they were able to successfully make the island suffer. And of course, if America, and especially at the time, America was like the land of dreams and prosperity, right? So yeah, a lot of Cubans were like, damn, like this is why I say not every Cuban that is called a gusano, which is also the invention of, here, I'll give you something funny about gusano. Fidel Castro used to call the counter-revolutionary anti-communist Cubans gusanos, okay? Because they betrayed their own nation. They betrayed the dignity and sovereignty of the Cuban peoples, and they work with the Americans to do terrorism, like to kill their own countrymen, right? So you call them gusano, worm. The CIA took that and tried to reframe it as a positive. So there are still Cuban accounts on Twitter that call themselves gusanos. The CIA tried to make the word gusano cool. Do you know how fucking insane that shit is? Where you're just like openly calling yourself a worm because you're like, yeah, I'm a worm. I hate my people. Yeah. Or like how XUC tried to say use us like, yeah. Those guys are stupid. It doesn't matter. But the reason why I say, that like not every single person that took up arms against the Cuban Revolution was, immensely wealthy slave owner, whatever the fuck, is because, of course, when America is this like massive continent of prosperity 90 miles away and you're suffering in comparison, and maybe you don't like the communist government, it's very easy to be fucking brainwashed. The American government also literally kidnapped Cubans to straight up brainwash them in the foster program. They had like a Peter Pan initiative where they would just like take Cuban children and ship them to the United States of America to literally put them in the foster care program. Yeah. Operation Pedro Pan. Isn't that fucking crazy? Like this is like shit that we understandably get disturbed when like Russia does, right? My aunt and uncle were Pedro Pan kids. Yeah. Yeah, I've covered this before. In 1996, a Cuban pilot observed a U.S. government fumigation plane spraying. Oh, this never stopped, by the way. This never stopped. They would use like Cessnas. They would use, because it's 90 miles off the coastline. So the American government would consistently arm and offer material support to like straight up Cuban American terrorists. And they'd just be like, go crazy. They would ship them off to fly over the island and just like crop dust and destroy their agricultural output over and over again. Is one of the most evil and one of the most fucked up things, dude. In 1996, a Cuban pilot observed a U.S. government fumigation plane spraying an unknown substance over Matanzas province. Shortly thereafter, an invasive pesticide-resistant insect never before seen in Cuba, the Thrips palmi, was discovered devouring potato crops in Matanzas. The Thrips palmi was later found in neighboring provinces among corn, beans, pumpkins, cucumbers, and other crops. Despite the Cuban government's best efforts to eradicate the pest, the palmi plague persisted. The U.S. provided a flimsy excuse that the U.S. pilot was marking his position with a smoke generator, something this plane was not outfitted for and would have been unnecessary because the Cuban ATC had already radioed the U.S. plane asking if they were having any technical difficulties. The U.S. plane N3093M was operated by the U.S. State Department, supposedly to destroy drug crops in Colombia. In fact, combating drug trafficking was used as cover for covert biowarfare against the Cuban people. It's so fucking evil. Like, the shit that we did to Cuba is so fucking evil. That's why I always say, like, you want to know something? This is what Israel's doing in Lebanon. This is what Israel is doing in Palestine. Okay? So just understand that we haven't stopped doing this shit at all. And what Israel is doing is so close to what America has done over and over and over again. That's why it's like, it's a cold, hard pill to swallow. Can you at least give a trigger warning for all the juicers in here before you say the G word? You're hurting their sensitive ears with your foul slur usage. Oh my God. Yeah. Big Daddy Hoops, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. Hasan, is now a bad time to resub? No. It's never a bad time to resubscribe.